Is this finally the year that the A&M Aggies could compete against, not only compete against Alabama, but beat Alabama? They haven't done it since 2012, where Johnny Manziel, the Heisman, it literally took a Heisman-worthy performance in order for them to do it. But A&M did it. Now, they still didn't win the SEC West that year, but, it showed promise that A&M could be a challenger to the Alabama Crimson Tide or to a lot of the teams in the SEC for years to come. Now, obviously, ever since then, they haven't. Last year showed a lot of promise for them. They went 9-1 with Jimbo Fisher finally kind of taking off. They won a New Year's Six bowl game, and then looking back at it, guys, these guys are going to have a lot of experience entering the 2021 football season. So a lot of A&M fans, as far as expectations, as far as Jimbo Fisher trying to ignite the program, trying to get the players and the fans to buy into the program. Of course, we all know his famous kind of phrase where he said that he was going to beat Alabama. This was going to be the year to do it. And then Nick Saban kind of replied that in golf. But yeah, A&M fans have all the right in the world to sit there and say that, this could be the year that we can do it, looking at some of the guys that are coming back. Now, I like A&M's chances on defense. A&M probably has the best defense in college football. I know I've been saying it for a lot of teams, but A&M has a right to say that, no, we have the best defense going into 2021. Looking at guys like Pevy and and McKinley Jackson and DeMarvin Leal and Clemens, and then you look at their secondary with Damani Richardson, and look at the kind of the Jones twins, even though they're not related, but you still got the Jones twins, Eric Young. I mean, A&M has a very, very experienced secondary. They have a very, very experienced defensive line, arguably the best defensive line in college football, at least in probably stopping the run, not in pass rushing, but at least stopping the run. And then obviously their linebacking core, they got some experience there as well. I think the general concern for me is the offensive side of the ball. Again, defensively, I do believe that this defense could even be better. Even though they lost guys like Buddy Johnson and Bobby Brown, this defense is loaded with talent. And again, you look at those recruiting classes, I think it's starting to finally pay homage for them that they can really establish a certain identity. But I look at this A&M offense and I just have general concerns. Number one is your quarterback position. Kellen Mond was a second-round pick, and Kellen Mond has kind of been one of the more consistent quarterbacks in the SEC, but he was really never a game changer. When it came to beating the most important teams, some of the best teams in your conference, only LSU. It was only LSU that they only got the job done against. Besides that, 4 years of getting crushed by Bama, you lose to Georgia. When it comes to beating some of the top teams, he was never a game changer or a game breaker for you. Now, again, he's a second-round pick. He was one of the best quarterbacks in that 2021 NFL draft, and rightfully so. He has a crap ton of upside. But now I look at a guy like Kellen Mond that had that 4 years of experience, and again, he was drafted highly, and I'm supposed to believe that Haynes King or what is his name, Kyle Kazada, I probably got that wrong. A&M fans, let me know his name. But I'm expected to believe that those two quarterbacks are supposed to go in there and automatically beat, challenge teams like Alabama. I just don't see that. I also look at the offensive line. You lose 4 starters off your offensive line, and I talked highly about A&M last year because their offensive line was extremely experienced. You had 5 starters off of that offensive line, and it showed. It definitely showed. Isaiah Spiller was doing his thing. You had guys like Anaya Smith. His versatility coming off of the backfield in the receiving game was there. You had some other guys there in the rotation as well. But Isaiah Spiller had over 1,000 yards in 10 games last year because of that offensive line with of course, his own ability to run the football as well. And now you lose one of the best rushing offensive lines in college football. You lose 4 starters. That is big. When you lose that much talent, it's hard to replace. It's extremely hard to replace, especially when Texas A&M, it's not like they're known to being like Alabama, Clemson, or Ohio State, where they can just reload, or Wisconsin or Iowa, where they can just reload every single year and produce those highly touted offensive lines. So now when you lose that much productivity, that much talent, yes, A&M still has a lot of talent on the offensive line, probably even more talent than the previous group that's there, but what about the experience? What about the chemistry? What about the cohesiveness of that offensive line when it comes to communicating, making the right calls, and then of course going against the other talents, the other talented defensive lines in the SEC. Like it's unproven, and I need to see it. And if I'm supposed to believe that Isaiah Spiller can replicate what he did last year, and some of the other guys can replicate the performance they did last year, I'm just not going to believe it. Because again, Isaiah Spiller and that offensive line, they were dominant last year in the ground game. But even if they can try to replicate it, which is good, they went up against Alabama, that same offensive line that I just talked about with all that productivity. They went up against Alabama and they couldn't do shit against them. Matter of fact, if you look at some of the other top tier running backs that A&M has produced over the last 8 years, they haven't done crap against Alabama. Kellen Mond and Johnny Manziel, you have to go all the way back to Christine Mike. Christine Michael was the last running back that had the success that he had against Bama back in 2012. He was the last one to do it. Besides that, Kellen Mond and Johnny Manziel are the only guys that have successfully rushed. And those are quarterbacks. So am I supposed to believe that Isaiah Spiller can replicate, especially the type of performance he did last year, even though he couldn't even do it against Bama? I just don't believe that. And again, Alabama's defensive line, for the most part, besides losing Christian Barmore, is fully intact. Their linebacking core is even better than it was last year. Like, I need to see more. So from the Texas A&M Aggies, and you see from me, I talked about Alabama a majority of this video because Alabama is the standard. If you beat Alabama, your chances of not only winning the SC West and winning the SC Championship and going to, it's high. We all know when you beat Alabama, it's the reason why it's talked about not only for weeks, it's talked about for years. People still talk about Johnny Manziel's performance and A&M's performance in 2012 to this day. But when you beat Alabama, it truly shows that you're ready. You're ready to compete for championships. And even though I like the promise, I like A&M, again, I do believe that they're probably going to have the best defense in the SEC. They can easily replicate it. I have way more questions and concerns about the offense than I do about the defense. So until we see the start of that 2021, and not even that, I need to see them against highly competition because you are playing Colorado, you're playing Kent State, you're playing inferior opponents, and maybe that can help buy time. But you're also playing Alabama earlier on in the season, and some people and some A&M fans can say, well, yes, we finally have that advantage over Alabama because not only are we playing them at home, we have them early. I would say A&M has an advantage when you're playing Alabama late. Because when you're playing Alabama late in the season, not only do you at this point, all that experience, all those concerns that I had could definitely be overshadowed now because of the amount of playing time that all those guys on the offensive side of the ball have had together. And plus, we can see defensively that they could and plus we can definitely see that defensively, they're probably going to be better. Offensively, they're probably going to be better again because based off all the playing time we've seen together, like, if you look at the past, the best time to play Alabama is in November, not earlier on in the season in September and October. That's not when you want to play them. You want to play them in November. There's a reason why Auburn has caught Alabama lacking a bunch of times in November. There's a reason why for that. So again, A&M has a shot to beat Alabama. There's no question about it. But when it comes to if I think that they can beat them, can they challenge them? They could. However, my confidence of A&M doing it is low. We need to see more. We need to see some film until I can finally say, okay, A&M has a shot. They have a really, really good chance of beating Alabama. And based off what we've been seeing from years prior, and even going into the season, I'm just not that confident right now that A&M can challenge the big dogs in the Alabama Crimson Tide.